Hey guys, you're watching Divide by Zero Gaming. I am Ines, and I am here to bring you a look at Blackrock Caverns. I think that's the name. There's too many Blackrocks, I can't get them straight. I'm pretty sure this is Blackrock Caverns. It's a new level 80 to 85 5-man instance that has been put into Cataclysm. A lot of you have probably seen it by now, but if not, this will be a fun little look at it. This is the normal mode. I do plan to do another video on the heroic mode once I get there. And I did miss the first pull just because I was having trouble loading the dungeon. I just got stuck in a vehicle quest, like while I was in my queue for the dungeon, and then it wouldn't let me leave the vehicle quest until I finished it, so I couldn't get into the dungeon, which was really annoying, and I would urge Blizzard to do something about that, because that's actually happened to me twice now, and it's pretty bad. So yeah, I missed the first pull, but then again, there's really nothing special on the first pull. We are almost in the first boss room, actually, now. You can see him walking on the right side of the screen here. He's pretty early on in the dungeon, and there are a bunch of other guys in the dungeon that you can see right now. There are a couple of trolls going around. You can see one just aggroed onto me here because I was standing too close. And the boss is actually on a patrol too, so you have to kind of work your way through the room, try to clear out as many of the mobs as you can before you pull the boss, and you have to time it well to make sure that you don't accidentally pull the boss while you're fighting mobs, which, as you will see, we actually kind of accidentally do here, and I'm just gonna own up to that right now. It was pretty much my fault. I did something stupid, as you will see. So, one thing you might notice is a giant black bar. That's just covering my chat window. My guild was talking in the background, and I didn't really warn anybody that I was recording, so I figured it wasn't really fair to put their conversations up on the internet. I just thought some people might not like that, so I blocked that out, and it took me way too long because this video editing software is so poorly designed. It took me a good 15 minutes to make a black rectangle the size I wanted. Not even kidding you. So now we're working our way through here, clearing out a bunch of these mobs, and these guys don't really have any special mechanics you need to be aware of. It's pretty much just nuke them down as fast as you can, and you should be good. And besides the troll that I mentioned, now right here you see I go to loot this person, at which point that guy aggroes onto me, and then we're stuck here fighting him when the boss comes over. So this is the first boss, and his name is Rom Og, and I don't know, he has a title, but I forget what it is. Bone Crusher or something like that. So he has a couple of mechanics you should be aware of. The first of which is something called like Chains of Despair or something like that. Chains of Woe, I was close. And that chains you in place here, and then he starts charging this massive attack called the Skull Crusher that does huge damage to anybody in melee range. So you need to DPS down the chains as fast as you can, and then just turn and run in the opposite direction to get out of the range of that to make sure that you are not hit by that. There you see, just break the chains and then shoot him. He also does put a debuff on the tank, which reduces effectiveness of healing by 25%. And he has a third ability that you did not actually see him use here. I guess he just never got the chance to. Don't know exactly. But what that does is creates an earthquake underneath each player that will do massive damage. I think it's like 7k per tick, and it ticks pretty fast if you stand on it, so you need to just move a little bit to either side and you get out of the range. Again, he makes one underneath each player, so it's always going to be there at the beginning. It's pretty easy to move out of it. You're just always going to have to make sure you move when that happens, or else you will not be the healer's friend. Now we see this giant, I don't actually know what it is, but it's a friend of a gnome. One other thing I should mention is that this was not my first time through the dungeon, but the first time you go through, you do pick up a series of quests via the remote quest hand-in system, and they're basic dungeon quests. They're kill this boss, etc., etc. So you get the quests, some nice little rewards as you go through it. And that guy does tie in with the gnome. He is the gnome's friend, and he cleared out some of those evolved Twilight Zealots that you saw there, which is very good because those guys are actually very nasty, hit very hard, not fun to deal with, have a ton of health. So it's good that you didn't have to fight 7 of them at once, or else you would die horribly. And you'll see him a few times throughout the dungeon. I'm sure it ties into the storyline in some way, but I honestly have no clue. So here you actually see one of those evolved Twilight Zealots. I don't actually know if it's possible to avoid this guy if you time it right, because I noticed he is also on a patrol. I'd imagine it probably is, but we did not. Now, this next area is something I will warn any class with a pet about. You jump down this little ledge here, and because the AI on pets is just the stupidest thing ever, he decides that instead of jumping down on his own, he's going to run around the long way and aggro every single mob between where we were standing and here. So now we have all these very unpleasant guys aggroed onto us that are going to be running over and killing us in a few seconds. You can see them coming down the ramp there. And there's actually another issue with this later, whereby there's a shortcut that some people like to use by jumping down a staircase rather than going down from the beginning of it. And again, if you are not careful and you have a pet, he will not do the jump with you. Instead, he will run around sideways, aggro the mobs, and then bring them down to the bottom. We didn't actually use the shortcut in this anyway, so you won't see that, but I will mention when it comes up just so that anybody who has a pet class and does use the shortcut when they do this is aware of that. So yeah, I lost my full guard twice here. Good riddance to him. He deserves to die after everybody aggroed there. So we still have more guys here, and we have one mage who's just standing up there, and none of the melee people can hit him. So eventually our very nice Orc Death Knight friend will death grip him down for us. But yeah, that really seems like a design flaw, to be honest. That's something I would urge Blizzard to look into. I mean, we've seen this issue for so long, the issue of pets not behaving in smart ways, not wanting to jump down 2-foot ledges. So I would really urge them to look into that somehow, because it is a bit of a problem. Here we have the next boss fight. Her name is Corla, and again, last name, I don't really know. I wasn't paying too much attention. Corla, Herald of the something or other. So she has 2 zealots sitting next to her, as you can see. And the main mechanic in this fight is these beams that you will see. They tick very quickly, as you can see. They give you a debuff, and if that debuff reaches 100 stacks, you will turn into a evolved zealot and pretty much wipe your group. So you may be wondering, well then, why are you standing at it? Because if the zealots get it, they will turn into the huge monsters and wipe your group, and that's not good. I've noticed that on normal mode, you can pretty much just, if you have somebody pop on evolution, we had that once, if you have somebody evolve, you can just DPS her down really quickly, go into an all-out DPS race, and the zealots will die when she dies too, so it might be possible to do it. On heroic mode, there are actually 3 zealots, and my understanding is that basically, if the zealot evolves, game over, you've wiped. So the debuff does take about 15 seconds to wear off. You want to let it get up to around 70 stacks or though, and then get out of the beam. The main issue that will screw you up in that fight is she does have a fear, so that's actually why we evolved one on my last run through here, was because I was about to go back in and pick it up again, and then I got feared, the Zealot got the extra stacks, it evolved. We managed to just DPS her down very quickly and get out of there alive, but it wasn't the ideal scenario. So yeah, just stand in the beams, make sure to designate who's going to be standing where, on the other one. Preferably have 2 melee DPS standing in each, or melee, no, absolutely not melee. 2 ranged DPS can do the job most effectively. Probably wouldn't want to put your healer in there just because you don't want your healer evolving, because then you're going to have no healer and a zealot to deal with, and that's going to be even worse than losing a DPS. But it's not too hard as long as you're coordinated and know what you're doing. This is where that shortcut was, I was mentioning, by the way. Some people jump down the edge of the staircase behind the pillar in the top right, and then their pet will run around and aggro a bunch of the mobs that we pulled here. And especially if your tank doesn't notice that, runs down and engages the zealots while you're also getting attacked from behind. Not a pretty situation to be in. So we're just going to beat on this guy a little bit. One thing that you've probably noticed by now that I should mention is that this is on 2 times speed right now, just to make it go a little bit faster. So everything's going at twice its normal speed, and you may also notice that there's no sound. I tried to leave the sound in, but in order to do that, I was going to have to go in my video editing software, and Fraps tends to split things into little segments to keep file sizes more manageable, so I would have had to go through and individually mute every clip, and I had like 30 clips in here.